Good morning, TAs. How we doing? If you don't know who I am, my name's Jeff Mylander. I'm going to be co-managing 201 and 202 labs this semester with Rob Keller. This video is designed to kind of walk you through BB Learn, give you some tips and tricks, talk to you a little bit about working with your students, show you some resources that'll be really helpful during the semester if they come to you and have any issues. So starting off here, you can see my screen, and so you can see I'm in spring 2020. Just a little background, I manage the BB Learn shells. I'll be updating them each semester as we go through, and then during winter session and summer sessions I update those again. Before the semester starts, we roll these over into your BB Learn shells, and so you're going to have all of these resources available to you. You'll have everything ready to go, so you're not going to have to worry about building your BB Learn shell. So we're going to start here with Bio 201 labs. I also have a Bio 202 shell open up here in my tabs. You'll notice up here is your section, so that's going to be good for you to kind of keep track of. You'll also notice that Bio 201 and Bio 202 shells are pretty much identical except for their weekly lab content. So this is something that I tried to do a couple years ago, was to just synthesize both 201 and 202 so that students, as they make that transition to another class, they have a same experience online. They know exactly where to find their materials, and they don't have to go hunting around for things. You can imagine having 5 different classes with 5 different BB Learn shells. Some are great, some are not. So that was sort of the intention. So I'm going to mostly be working in the 201 shells, and I will let you know whether there's any differences in here. The joys of online learning. Neighbor dogs barking. I'm actually in Cottonwood right now, kind of making this video from my mother's place. So we'll see how well this works as we move through stuff. So anyways, all right, so we want to start up here with your TA training manual. Before you so we want to start up here with our TA training manual. Before you come to orientation, you should spend some time reading through this TA training manual. I'm going to open this up for you so you can see what we've got. If you scroll down here to the table of contents, this is going to have lots of information for you to get yourself set up and situated before the semester goes. So our first section here is expectations. This is basically a little bit of narrative on what do you expect as a teacher, as a TA. I'm sure most of you that are watching this are new to a TA position, and you're not here in grad school to be a teacher. You're probably here to do research or save the world, or really get into the actual scientific process. Your TA position, it's really nice. It pays you, it gets you a tuition waiver. So this is here to help you and kind of give you an outline of maybe what to expect before you show up and start teaching. We've got some agendas and lab meeting examples here, and then some narratives about what do we expect from you as a TA. So please read through that and bring any questions to your orientation. The next section is getting yourself established. So these 4 trainings right here, preventing workplace harassment, information security essentials, the CERT, and the FERPA training, are going to be really important that you take those. They are mandatory that you take those before you start your TA training, your TA position. So take some time, follow through, get those set up. And then below that is getting your technology set up. So We have what's called the VPN. So if you're not familiar with that, that is your ability to work remotely. Given these times now, you're going to need to be setting that up so that you can access our share drive right below it. The share drive is where we keep all of our files accessible for you so that you can access those. You don't have to store those on your computer or a thumb drive or anything like that. What's happened in the last couple of years is I've been shifting a lot of what we need, or a lot of what you need, onto your BB Learn shells so that everything is even just right there and instantaneous. Working back and forth between the share drive is a little bit challenging. When we get into the tests and making tests, you'll be accessing test banks and weekly reviews and things like that there. Moving down a little bit, this is then getting your teach on. So how do you prepare for the first week? There's resources for seating charts, communicating with students, what does a syllabus in BB Learn look like, practicing, preparing. We really want you to take the time to get ready before each week so that you know what's going on in the class and in the lab. You are familiar with what slides they need to know. You're familiar with the structures that they need to identify. So you're going to want to look through some of these resources here. The next section, attendance, absences, and accommodations. This is really important information that you're gonna need as far as when a student talks to you about an excused absence or a class miss memo or an accommodation letter. And we'll be going over these in our weekly lab meetings. So read through this, bring your questions again to orientation. We can go over some more of that in detail. But there are some little nuances between these forms that you'll get, and they all have a little bit of variability between them. So we can kind of run you through that later. This next section, first week of labs, just how to create a welcoming environment, how to bring your students in, how to share a little bit about who you are, how to make them have a good experience that first week. My background is in education. I've been teaching professionally since 2004, I guess. 2003. So, that first week, that second week of lab, those are really going to reinforce the way your students view you, and this is a really great opportunity for you to build some rapport with those students right from the get-go. When you do that, they're more likely to come and talk to you. They're more likely to be honest with you. They're more likely to come in and communicate when they're having problems, and that's going to allow you to help them be a little bit more successful. And then as we move down in the following weeks, we've got information about testing. We've got lab protocol. We've got grading. We've got communicating with your students. We've got emergency situations. So if you ever find yourself having some kind of issue with a student or something with the lab breaks, what to do, you're going to want to read through this document just to kind of have an idea of what we expect of you. You're a professional. You should be able to think on your own. So be prepared for the worst and hope for the best, right? And then as we move into the end of the semester, we might get some snow. So what's gonna happen with snow day plans? Down here is student information, more handouts, things that we'll be passing out to the students. A lot of this is on BB Learn, so we're not going to have to pass out too much of this, but it's good for you to know about, and that you can also reinforce these policies with your students, especially when they say, oh, hey, I'm going to miss this lab, and rather than giving them a break, you can say, this is what's expected of you, and here's where that information is. And so it's going to allow you to have a little bit better lab management and classroom management. And then finally, just our weekly supplies list and equipment. So if you're in the labs helping set up, you're going to want to know what to set out, what to get from the back storage rooms, where to put it, where our dissection equipment, things like that. Okay, so make sure that you read through this document and come prepared to our lab TA meetings with that information. Any questions, we're obviously happy to help answer. We will be going through some of that at our orientation just to kind of reinforce the important parts. So the next section here, you can see our BB Learn test and grade help for TAs. This was made this summer from Becky, and Becky has been one of our super TAs and has been with us for quite a while in 201, 202, and 182 labs. But what she put together here is a gradebook tutorial. I'm not going to open the document, but the table of contents is all right here. So as you're working through the semester, if you're needing to move columns around or change columns or update columns in your gradebook, this is great information on how all of this works. So how do you round at the end of the semester? How are you going to drop the lowest test grade? Because we're going to drop the lowest test grade. Emailing and steps for faculty to student communication. What does that mean? And we'll obviously go over this more in lab meetings, but this is all here as a good reminder. So if you do have questions, reference this. You'll also notice, I forgot to mention this, right here you can see that this is hidden from students. Please keep that hidden from students. They don't really need to see that. This is here as a resource for you. Below that, we've got our BB Learn tutorials for testing and test pools. So because we've made this transition to a lot of online work, our tests are online, students are going to be submitting their assignments online, so their notebook drawings, so their weekly reviews. You're going to need to be familiar with updating the tests and the test pools. And as this unrolls this semester, we're going to undoubtedly have issues with some of the tests. So this summer, Savannah, Becky, Molly, and Evan all put a ton of time into updating this and making this really dialed in. These were online tests that kind of got thrown on to BB Learn in the past when we went fully online back in March. Due to COVID. So what we've got here is just a little bit of an update. So you might get an email from one of your fellow TAs or from Rob or I saying, hey, this question in this test is bad. We noticed that there's an incorrect answer, or it's written kind of weird. Please update it. Give your students points for this. And so you're going to want to go in and change that in your pool, your test pool, and hopefully we catch it within the first couple of days, okay? And then below that is our BB Learn and Louis grading PowerPoint. So again, just a little PowerPoint to help you walk through your grading and submitting those grades into Louis. Again, during weekly meetings, we'll help update you. We'll kind of tell you where to go and what to do with all that. So, all right, now let's move into some of the resources on BB Learn. Some of your students are going to look at this and be like, oh my God, what is all of this stuff, right? So we've got what's happening in lab. 1NA start here. Weekly lab material, massive, and then track your progress. The reason I set it up this way was because I felt like having a bunch of folders, less content area on the left and a bunch of folders, then it kind of buries everything. And so I wanted students to be able to see their resources fairly easily, like a table of contents, and then they can kind of scroll through here a little bit quicker. And really there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections that they really need to know about. So if they start here, I've made a how to be successful video for our students that kind of walks them through this. They're required to watch that before your first week of labs. So they should have a really basic idea, or pretty good idea, I should say, of what to expect and where things are on here. Hopefully they watched it and hopefully they're familiar with this. So they might have some questions for you, but this is going to be something that you might want to point out a few highlights in that first week of lab. So if we start at being successful tips, all of our content areas, when you go into them, they have a set of instructions up here for the students to, again, try to highlight it, point out their importance, and hopefully they will take the time to read it. So the first 4 items are probably the most helpful and relevant. So if you look here, read this second, improving your academic performance in lab. This is a document that I made that has kind of been adapted. It used to be the How to Be Successful in 201 and 202 labs document, but I've kind of updated it over the last couple of years and added some information to it. The reason this is here is, one, hopefully students will read it and use some of these techniques in their labs to perform better. I think it's really important that you know that it's here, because as you work through the semester with your students and as you start to get to know some of them in your office hours, through Zoom meetings, in labs, as your TAs, your undergraduate TAs, are helping you in labs, they are hopefully communicating to you, so-and-so is having some issues with X, Y, and Z. As you look at grades, and hopefully you're going to be looking at grades weekly to kind of keep track of how well your students are doing, you can reach out to them and say, hey, John, you're not doing super well. It's week 2, week 3. I noticed that you've failed the last 3 exams. What's going on? What's happening in your life? Are you working remotely? Do you have a computer? Are you able to access the internet? Where are you in the world right now? Are you on campus, or are you, doing this fully online from the reservation where you don't have any good internet? So, these are conversations that you can then bring up, and then you can direct students to this document. You might also be working with students in office hours, and they're saying to you, I used to be an A student, and now I'm just having a really hard time, and I'm studying all the time, but it's just not sinking in. So these might be some ways that you can coach them through the learning process. So I'll just kind of show you really quick what's in here. This is a description of what A, B, C, D, F students generally do, what they can expect to do to perform to get an A. So, and it's kind of based off of Bloom's taxonomy, which is I'll show you here in a second, but it's basically a hierarchy of learning skills. So low-level learning skills at the bottom, like memorization, higher-level thinking skills like application, analyzing, creating knowledge. So we're going to try to encourage students this semester, you're going to want to try to encourage your students to work at those higher level thinking skills. So this outlines it. And I added this in because I kept getting students that would say, I was an A student and now I have a C in your class, and that's not me. And so then we would go to this document and I would say, well, here's what A students generally do in this class. And I would usually poke a little bit and prod and say, well, what are you doing? How are you learning? How much time are you learning? What sort of learning techniques are you using? And generally they were falling around the C or the D, range, maybe the B range. And I'd say, well, A students tend to do this. And this has come from grad students like you. This has come from our undergraduate TAs. This has come from students who have gotten A's in the labs, just from me asking them questions and interviewing them and taking that information and compiling it into this document. This is a document called Introspection and Metacognition. This is something that I really like. This is sort of comes out of my own personal philosophy of teaching, and so I really feel like learning and performing well comes from our historical and our current selves. And so if you want to take some time to look through this, I think a lot of students that are coming into our classes, they come from a gigantic diversity of backgrounds. Some of them have never had to try before. Some of them have had parental supervision and oversight for their entire lives. Some of them have been told they're just the smartest kids in the world, and they're actually not. Some of them have had to overcome adversity of broken homes and broken families and not eating food, right? So just a giant spectrum of students. And so when they come and talk to you in office hours, or you're working with them about how to be a better learner, you can direct them to this, and you might ask them some of these questions, right? In my 201 lectures, I talk a lot about imposter syndrome, where people are doubting their accomplishments and they don't feel like they belong. So you might have a student that's a minority who comes in to this lab and doesn't feel like they should be there because they're in this like new world of they may be a first generation student. They're the first in their family to go to college, and there's a lot of social pressure from their families to do well, and they're in this new world where they don't have the social capital of navigating, BB Learn and how to talk to a TA or a college professor. And so you can talk to them about that. Maybe they make some references to this. Analyzing your current self is just, how do you learn? How do you learn best? How can you change the way that you learn? Have you taken all the due dates and put them into a planner so that you're prepared for the semester? Have you set up your schedule to break up these really big chunks of assignments and broken them into smaller tasks? And then, your future self is last. So reflecting a little bit on their future self is, how are they going to react when they don't do as well as they thought they should on their first exam? How are they going to react if they get a C in this lab? Is that going to just kind of crush them? Are they going to just sort of disconnect from performing well in your lab and give up? Or are they going to try to work harder? So again, part of your role is looking for that with your students and encouraging them to do better and come into open labs and come in and meet with you, right? So, and then this is a little bit of information about building long-term memory. I've got some examples in here that you can read through, but again, it's built off of Bloom's taxonomy, and I call it building your neural mansion, right? So, in order to be a really strong learner and to be able to apply concepts, well, you have to memorize, right? And so you have to have a really strong foundation, just like a house needs a really strong foundation. So as you go up in higher level thinking skills, then you can sort of compartmentalize information and add more information on, right? You can't build a house and start with the roof. It's just not going to work. And then if you're trying to lift the entire roof up to put the walls on, you might damage it in the process. So starting small and working their way up into higher level thinking skills. These next few pages are how to be successful in labs. So again, this comes from a lot of information from past TAs and past undergraduates who have done really well. What do you guys do? How long are you studying? What are the things that you're doing to really digest this information? So you can look over this. We have this online for the students so that they can reference it. And if they come into your class or they come into your office hours again, you can say, did you print out this lab study guide? Are you asking yourself these questions every time you look at a slide? Are you asking yourself these questions every time you look at a model? And these are the types of thinking that we want to model for our students, right? And you all have probably done this naturally, which is why you're in grad school, because you're capable of thinking and asking questions and paying a little bit more attention to detail when you're looking at a slide. So, you're going to want to try to transfer those learning skills to your students. Okay, so the more you can interact with them, the more you can coach them on this, the better they'll probably perform. So I made reference to this a little bit earlier, but this is just a sample weekly study guide, taking all of the things that we have our students do and breaking them into smaller, more manageable tasks. So if a student has a lab, and obviously we don't have labs on Monday, but if a student has a lab on Monday, they should be trying to finish their weekly review questions and any assignments, their notebook drawings. They should try to find a chunk of time while it's still fresh in their head to finish it that day, and then spend in maybe an hour and a half practicing and preparing, making flashcards, getting things set up. finding some chunks of time in the week to come to Open Lab so they can either come to your specific Open Lab. Maybe it's office hours instead of Open Lab, but getting clarification, and then finding time to read their lab manual and watch the screencasts, and then setting a good chunk of time to study, and then right before their lab they should be reviewing, right, and not trying to make flashcards sitting in the hall frantically before the lab test, right? So and then these next couple pages just describe some of the activities that they might do, so I'm not going to go over that with you. And then last is study groups. I can't tell you how many times students have talked to me about not being able to study on their own, but not wanting to work in study groups because they're not efficient. So these are just some guidelines that I have here set up for students so that if you do see students working together in the lab, you may reference them to this document and say, hey, I noticed you 4 people are working together. Maybe you should check this out to make sure you set up some really good guidelines outside of class so that you really, have an effective study session. All right, so let's move back here. The next one, the next resource that I have, Now Do This. What kind of learner are you? This is something I would encourage you to take as well, but also to encourage your students that are struggling. They might not have any idea how they learn, and they might just be flailing to get through, and they think that making flashcards and reading the manual is good. I've had students come into Open Labs office hours, and they're like, I'm watching the video 4 times. And I'm like, whoa, why are you watching the video 4 times? It's like 3.5 hours of time that you're spending rewatching something, right? The first time, they should watch it once, maybe twice. The first time they're watching it, they should be taking really good notes and being an active participant. The second time, they review or reference areas that they're a little bit weaker in. After that, they just, it's like, think about watching a movie, one of your favorite movies. You can probably quote it, but you also can kind of tune in and tune out because you know exactly where you are in that movie. So anyways, reference them here. This will kind of help them walk through, are they a visual learner? Are they auditory? Are they better for reading and writing? Are they more, kinesthetic and physical, right? So, walking around their room or going to the gym and thinking about this while they're working out or running on the treadmill. They've also got a lot of other really helpful resources up here that, the students can look at. And again, this isn't the the questionnaire that will answer all students' problems, right? There's a million of these things out there. This is just one of them, but it might be something that they've never thought about. All right, moving down, just it's that same document, the study group guidelines, but it's just here as one reference tool. I kind of pulled it out and made it just one page, thinking that maybe students won't actually look at this document, but maybe they want to reference study groups. So this folder here, Campus Resources, this is also going to be something that you're going to probably want to point out. So this is a guide to student resources. If you open this up, this is a PDF, and it shows like a sort of a summary of all the resources that are on campus. And basically what I did was I hyperlinked those resources and I put them into BB Learn so that it's a little bit quicker for students to find. And I also copied and pasted their mission statements or a little paragraph off of their page. So getting technology set up, e-learning, so if they're having issues with BB Learn, the academic success centers so they can find tutoring, supplemental instruction, other academic support here. Health promotions, some students don't know that we have a health campus or a health center on campus, so you might send them here. Student life, disability resources, so you might be talking with a student who tells you that they had an IEP or an individualized education plan in high school and they don't have anything here. You might get an accommodation letter from one of your students, and again, we'll go over this more in orientation and in your lab meetings, but you're going to have to make some accommodations for those students. So right here is their website. Below that, when you go to their website, this is where you're going to find accommodation letters. So you'll go to this access login, and then you'll click on faculty login. A new page will pop up, and then you'll click on which class, and it'll show you the students that have accommodation letters. Below that then is our Native American student services. So we do have a pretty large population of Native American students given our location to lots of reservations, and so you might reference some students here. Inclusion and multicultural services, veterans services, international education, other student support services. So again, really anytime you're communicating with your students and they're talking about, oh, I was a veteran and I'm struggling in here, you might link them here if they don't already know about it. Okay, and then at the bottom, hopefully this never has to happen to you, but this is a guide for student suicide prevention, what to do, and again, you're going to want to reference them to the campus health services. Okay, if you do have a student that says something to you in open lab or office hours or lab, you're going to want to walk them right over there immediately. But you might also have some students that say, my roommate is talking about this. So again, you can reference the student to these resources. All right, so let's go back and I'll kind of walk you through some of these other things. These are policies at NAU. You should be familiar with that. You might have a student tell you that they can't afford the textbook or the lab manual. There's this program that is designed for low-income students so that they can actually get textbooks and be successful. We also have lab manuals and the DVDs on reserve at Klein Library. They can check them out. I think it's like 4 hours. So you can tell the students, go to Klein Library, check out the reference material, sit at the library for 4 hours, read the lab manual, work with the DVD, and they don't have to buy it. Below that is the note-taking. So again, two methods that help students be a little bit more actively engaged with the videos. So if they're watching our online screencasts and they're just kind of taking really bad notes that you're noticing in their notebooks, you might stop and say, hey, let me show you some better ways to take notes, or let me help you improve your note-taking abilities. Adding, dropping, withdrawal dates. This is here. This links to the registrar's office. What does it mean to withdraw? You might have a student ask you this and you might not know, so you can, again, check out that. Below that is a safe walk program. This is designed for students who don't feel safe walking around campus. Maybe they have gotten out of a really bad relationship. Maybe there's someone stalking them. Maybe they have been, gotten into an altercation with some other students, right? And so this is designed to help students get around campus safely. Down here is our policy statements, and then we've got help for international students. So if you have a international student that's really struggling with the language, you might reference them here to help them get some tutoring in English. And then this last one is called Fruit and Veggies RX. This is a way, and you all as students can also sign up for this, but it's a way to get healthy fruits and veggies into your diet if you're a student here at NAU. So you can go get free veggies and fruits. All right, so that is it for our being successful tips. Number 2 here is our syllabus. You can see we've got another set of instructions. This contains our guiding principles of the course. You should transcribe the due dates into your calendars. So again, just some basic information. We have our updated syllabus here that will transfer into your shells. Students are going to be expected to download, read this, and they're going to sign a syllabus contract. This is new, obviously, and so we are putting in here that the syllabus is designed for NAU Flex starting on the 12th, but because everything is changing so rapidly, I kind of made reference to those like inflatable people that you tend to see at like a used car lot that kind of flail in the wind and you never really know which way they're going to go. I feel like this summer and semester have been like that so far, and we think we're doing one thing, and then all of a sudden we get new policy changes, right? We were going to open face-to-face on August 12th, and now we're remote until August 31st, so who knows when that will change. So anyways, we put this disclaimer in here that things can change, be prepared. So if you have a student complaining to you, say, this is in the syllabus. Below that is our lab safety protocol. This is what we will be doing, and we will, Rob and I will be going over this with you at our orientation. We'll be harping on you for this. I'm sending this out to your undergraduate TAs that are going to be working in your labs. This is really important, and we really need to make sure that we hold students accountable to this. So you're really going to need to reinforce this every single lab with every group of students that you're going to have. The short of the long, 6 feet apart, wear a mask. We're going to divide your hour and 45-minute lab into 2 groups. So we'll have 50% in the first group and 50% in the second group. There's a 10-minute break between the 2 groups in which you and the undergrad TA that you have will be wiping everything down. But after a student touches a model, they've got to wipe it down. We're going to have cleaning supplies out at every table, and so they're going to be expected to wipe everything down before they leave and their area, and then you guys are going to wipe it down as well. The syllabus contract, after they read the syllabus contract, after they read the syllabus, they're going to print out this contract, they're going to initial each line, they're going to turn it into you, and you're going to give them 5 points for submitting this. Okay, then first lab handouts. Again, a set of instructions, and then our notebook checklist. In the past, we have always required that students buy a lab composition notebook, and then they follow our notebook checklist. They make drawings, they make circles, they make a table of contents, and they put their drawings in there. What we're doing now is this document is like, 40 pages or something, and it is basically their lab composition notebook, but we're doing it all digitally. All of the requirements are still there. There are 2 blank pages for them to take notes in. There are circles for them. I'll just open it for them to see it. So right up here we have instructions. One thing you're going to want to point out during the first week of labs is using these resources so that when they're uploading their documents and their drawings to BB Learn, they're compiling it into a single PDF. We don't want them emailing you 10 pictures of their drawings that you're trying to manage and grade. We want it in one PDF, and that's it, okay? And there's a spot for them to put that. If they can't follow that, then you don't have to give them credit for it. That being said, you should also help coach students on how to do this, and so you're going to make sure that you go over this with them that first day. So you might run them through an example. Okay, so any other instructions are here. The other thing that we're doing is only making 5 of the recommended drawings mandatory because of technology issues, because of time constraints in the lab and open labs, because some students are only going fully online, some you'll never meet. We decided that we were only going to make them draw 5. So they can draw all of them, you're only expected to draw the first 5. And again, this looks the same for 202, just the lab 1 is different. It's the endocrine system there instead of histology. So there are screencasts for that lab that they're supposed to watch before showing up, a real quick overview of what they're supposed to draw. They've got 2 blank pages of notes, so those are going to be filled up. And then we've got the labels here for them, the titles of the slides that they're supposed to be drawing, and then what they need to label. Okay, so they then have to put the magnifications down here. Again, they're going to upload these documents, and you're going to grade only 5 of them. So you can see we've got everything set up and laid out for them. Lab 2, more instructions. Here's their screencast. Here's generally what they have to do. And then there's space for 2 pages of notes. And then again, what is it that they need to draw? Okay, so you'll be walking your students through this, like I said, the first week of lab, making sure they're really clear on what to do. So 80 pages instead of 40. But I don't know what the university charges for a copy anymore, if it's 10 cents or 25 cents. So, you know, they should be able to get that taken care of. All right, below that, a couple of example notebook drawings, a tissue classification sheet. This is a concept map that helps them keep things organized. If you have students that don't know how to use a microscope, then you might reference them here. You're going to want to teach them sometimes, and somehow they forget between, you know, 181 and 182 and 201 and 202. So this is here for them. And then what we have here is our rubric for grading those notebooks. So you can use this. Again, this is not available to students. It is hidden, so you can keep it that way. But you can print this out for you during your grading, and so you can look at, all right, drawing 1, 2 out of 2, 1 out of 2. If they don't have notes, you're subtracting a point. If it's disorganized, you're subtracting a point. Here's your total. This should help you make your grading go a little bit more quickly each week, because you're going to grade every lab each week. Okay, you don't need to grade tests because they're all on BB Learn. You're going to be grading 5 of the weekly review questions, and I'll go over that a little bit later. All right, so next is our open lab schedule. Once we design this, you'll post it here under open lab schedule. And so obviously this is something that we can't do until our first lab meeting. So we'll have one of the super TAs do that. And basically what it'll look like is something like this. So I think this is a 202 open lab. 201, we're going to have open lab in bio room 238, and that will be during the week. And for 202, we'll be in bio 419. We'll go over how that looks each week, how we're going to move equipment around. Bio 238 is fully equipped, so we don't need to move anything up there, but we will need to get some stuff out, set it up, clean everything, and so we'll kind of go over all that with you. But generally we try to schedule a couple of people in there at a time. That may be a little bit different this semester as we expand our open lab hours and have to disperse people, so we might just have one person in there at a time this semester. All right, moving down, study resources and practice material. Here we have weekly study guides. These were created by one of my undergraduate lab TAs. She basically took all of her PowerPoints and turned them into slightly interactive study guides for the students. So you can see there's this disclaimer. Some students will open this and say, oh, this is all I need to know. Wrong, right? There's a lot more that they need to know, but we wanted to put this in here. So as you can see, what are the functions of skin? So hopefully a student can sit here and answer those questions, right? The dermis, what are the 2 major layers? Papillary and reticular. All right, great. Now can the student identify these structures? All right, Pacinian corpuscles. What about this? Okay, Meissner's, right? And so hopefully the student is then using these almost as flashcards to work through the material. So we have this for both 201 and 202 for every single lab. You might be thinking to yourself, how are students not successful? I think about that a lot. All right, then down here we have practical reviews, some information for them, and then Jeopardy style reviews for lab and lecture. So if they're struggling in both, they have those available to them. This number 6, other educational links, I already have some information here, but again, if you find things that you think are helpful, or you know of resources that you think would be really helpful, you're more than welcome to add them to your BB Learn shells and put them here. You can also send that out to all of us. You know, we always love getting information from you all and updating this with really cool resources, so feel free to do that. Okay, moving to this, moving down here to, I'm going to close these really quick, our weekly lab material section. What you'll notice here's 201, screencast clarification. and in 202 we have a pre-lab histology test. So real quick, if you look at the screencast clarification for you 201 people, because last year we had a lab management change in 201, and again this year we have a lab management change in 201. Not everything is totally uniform, okay? And so we have some screencasts that don't necessarily correlate with PowerPoints. That being said, the information in the screencast and in the PowerPoints are the same, but there's some things that are a little bit different, and there's some information that's emphasized a little bit more in depth in a screencast than it is in the PowerPoint. So we want students to know that there are some inconsistencies in 201. That being said, the PowerPoint information and notebook checklist are the most up-to-date for what we want them to learn. Okay, so they should be using the notebook checklist as a guide, and what's in the notebook checklist should be where they go. Okay, so watching the screencast is important, and that will be super helpful, and they are good, but they just aren't totally in line with what our PowerPoints and notebook checklist are. Okay, for 202 people, if we look at the histology test, they are required to do this online before they show up to our first week of labs. So they should find some time to look through this tissue review, go back through their notes from 201, and practice their histology. Histology is huge in 202. We look at slides every single week, so they're going to need to beef up on their knowledge of tissue. So here is that tissue classification sheet again. Here's an online histology practice site from the U of M. And then below here is our pre-lab histology test. So it is all practical. They have, I think, 20 questions. They get an image of a slide, and we ask them, what is the tissue, what's its function, what's its location. So that's what they're going to need to do. I'll go into the testing a little bit more as we work through the weekly lab material here. The other thing I forgot to mention is under what's happening in lab, I totally just skipped over this entire section, so I apologize for that. Announcements. There are 3 announcements that are going to populate your BB Learn shell. These have been updated. This pre-semester email is slated to open and go out to your students on August 10th of 2020. Obviously, depending on when you are watching this video, that date might change, but these students are going to get a pre-semester email before everything even the semester even starts. This gives them some information about when we're starting labs, where we are, what is required and not, how to use BB Learn if they're maybe a transfer student or new to this university, a little bit of what to do before they show up, and then our lab safety protocol. So this is geared for the students that are wanting to get ahead, that are a little bit eager to get more planned out. Those will probably be your students that will do a little bit better in your class. When you get this, you'll notice this item is not available, right? So it's not going out to your students. When you get this, one of the things you need to check, and when you access your BB Learn shells, what you're going to need to do is go to edit for these emails, and sometimes the dates and the settings that I program in here don't roll over into your BB Learn shell. So you're going to want to just double check this. Each week you should just run through your due dates, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. But here, this is date restricted. It's set to open on August 10th at 8 a.m. You're going to want to, and you need to, click this button right here, send a copy of this announcement. Some of your students are not going to be looking at BB Learn until the 5th week of the semester. So make sure you send this to their emails so that they're getting this announcement, and then you'll click submit. Okay, that will go out to your students, and you're going to want to make sure you do that before August 10th, okay? Then the next email you'll be sending out will go out on August 12th. And so again, you're going to want to make sure you send that notification, that announcement via email by August 12th. You're also going to want to change this information in green. This is more specific. This is the very first day of the semester. Hey, welcome to Bio 201 or 202 labs. We are starting on this day and time. So this is going to be specific to your lab sections. It has links they need to watch, lab safety protocol, and then at the bottom, fill in your name, give them your email, and again, let them know who you are. And then the third email that you'll send out is going to go out on Sunday the 16th before the first week of labs. And again, it's just a little bit of a reminder. Here's what you're supposed to do. Here's our lab safety protocol. Make sure you follow it. And so this is going to help them be a little bit more prepared. Obviously, you're welcome to add in information to this if you want to say a little bit more, if you want to change some things around, that's fine, but don't delete any of this content. You can just add to it. New things is that I added in the calendar this year to our BB Learn shells. I've had a lot of students that use this calendar, and we've never really added due dates to our online resources. So now we've got all of the assignments that are in there. So you can see, oh, this is actually for my lecture. Sorry. Here you go. Pre-lab histology test is due 8:23 at midnight. So they will see that populate. Over here, you can see there's an online articulations lab due on the 27th. All right, so that is there. You can direct students to that. Under that is a discussion board. I put this in whether you use it or not, or you have your students use it or not. I had gotten some feedback from students that they liked this, and I also had gotten some feedback from TAs that liked using this feature so that they weren't getting as many emails from their students, and that the students were actually communicating with each other. So I just thought I would put it in here, so feel free to use it or not. You don't have to, but it could be a nice way to kind of chat with your students, especially now these first couple of weeks that we are going online. Then you can use that. And then I also added BB Learn Collaborate Ultra. So Collaborate Ultra is a way that you can run your office hours. If you want to hold office hours, you could do a group review. You can kind of do it however you like, but you can say office hours, lab 1 review session, and you can create this session here and change some parameters, and then you can go into this, join the session, and you can now hold an online review session with your students. So if they're asking you about blood cells, or maybe they're asking you about muscle physiology, you can then walk them through sharing your screen. You can share content with them. So you can create a whiteboard. You can draw on that. You could share your camera. You could share a file with them, and so you can walk them through a PowerPoint. You can walk them through histology images, really kind of however you want to go about doing that. Or you can just have one-on-one sessions with your students and set up a time, if they can't make open labs, or maybe you have a student from Alaska that is doing this fully online, and so you are just setting up in a 1 hour appointment. You can also you can also record these somewhere, and I don't remember exactly where to do that, but yeah, I'm just going to move on. The other thing that you can create, where is it? I'm still learning all of this. Oh, sorry, breakout groups. So if you had 10 people, you could give them a question, and then you can send them into different breakout groups and let them do some group work together, and then you can kind of pop in and out of those groups. So again, lots of bells and whistles that you can add in here, and it's here as a resource. Oh, that's great. So it's a good resource for you if you wanted to use that. You're welcome to use Zoom. There's all kinds of other resources that you can utilize to help those students. So that's that for the what's happening in lab section. All right, almost there. Let's look at a couple of resources in our weekly content. So everything is color coordinated. So here's our instructions again, and a nice little description of what they will see. So online lectures, these are links to YouTube, are always in black. The course PowerPoints are always in orange. Any lab resources are in blue. These are things that Molly, Evan, Becky have made over the summer as well as over the past year. These are here as helpful tools for the students. Hybrid review PowerPoints are in green. Weekly review questions in red, and the weekly review question submission in purple. Tests in magenta, and notebook submission in teal. So I started running out of colors because there's a million things here. But you can see that they have this how to be successful in lab. Right below it is the PowerPoint that accompanies that lecture. For 201, they have 4 other lectures to watch, and right below that is the PowerPoint that's going to accompany it. I'm going to quick pop over here to 202, and we'll open up the endocrine system. So again, how to be successful in 202, and then they only have their endocrine system. For those of you TAs returning, there was a lab syllabus and lab setup, screencast and PowerPoint. I got rid of it because our first week of labs, all of our TAs are going to be going over the syllabus and how the lab is going to work with our students. So I figured it's on you guys, and we're just going to not have that for students and trying to make it a little less overwhelming for them. All right, below that, what you will see, and I don't know if you guys can hear the cicadas starting to come out. I think they're cicadas. And so you know you're in the desert when you hear them, right? Okay, so below that in blue are model PowerPoints. So where we have whatever labs we have models in, we have images of those models and an accompanying PowerPoint. So we had Molly and Evan take pictures, and we then had them kind of highlight all the structures that they need to know. The reason we did this was for fully online students, they can see the models that we would be using in class. And if we use these models on our tests, the students can't say, well, I wasn't able to see those models. Now we have it fully online, and they can see the models, they can see the slides, everything is there and available to them. So all the structures are labeled that they need to know and identify. So kind of a useful tool. Below that then is our hybrid reviews. Given our current situations, we are not running hybrid reviews. Normally the students would watch their online screencast, they would show up to your lab, they would take a test, and then you would run them through a Socratic questioning 10 to 15 minute presentation. We're not doing that now. They're going to show up, they're going to come in for about 40 minutes, and they're only going to work on identifying slides, identifying structures on models. So you're there to help teach them, you're there to help walk them through the information. So if we open this up, what you'll see is that it's a PowerPoint with a bunch of questions in here. So I'm just going to skip down here, and you can see that these are things that, again, they can use as a study guide, so they can practice what is anatomical position. There's some answers. What's directional terms? What do they mean? Here's your answers. Okay, so you can direct them to these as resources. Then the next difference that we'll see between 201 and 202, so I'm in the 201 section right now. 201 has this red section for the weekly review questions. They are PDFs. Each week the students are going to need to print out that PDF, answer the questions, and then they're going to save it as a PDF, and then they're going to go to this submit weekly review questions here, and they're going to upload their document right here, and you're going to grade 5 out of the 10. Okay, at random. You should grade 3 before midterm and 2 after midterm. Please don't grade all 5 in a row, because then they won't do the last one. So the idea is to incentivize them to do it every week and grade at random. The ones that you don't grade, you can keep track with tally marks, and you can give them professional points for the weeks that you aren't grading, so at least they get some points towards their grade. Okay, now what's different here is that in 202 we got rid of those weekly review questions, and we've turned them into online tests. They are unlimited time, they're 6 points, and each week they're going to be graded. So for you 202 people, you're going to need to go in here, and there is one question, a short answer question, that you're going to have to grade every week for these students. So basically BB Learn will grade the first 5 points. You'll need to grade the last point and then click submit. Okay, so, and we'll walk you through how to do that later. Since I'm in 202, I'm just going to stay here. We have our tests. So students will only have 25 minutes to work on this test. They're going to get one question at a time. Those questions are going to be randomized from a big pool of questions. So behind the scenes, there are 30 or so questions, or 40 questions in each test. They're going to get 20 of them pulled out, 10 practical and 10 conceptual questions. You may get some issues with technology, or it didn't save, or the internet shut down. Make sure that students are taking a screenshot immediately and sending you that screenshot and communicating with you as soon as that problem happens. Generally, we can reopen that for them and let them go through it. But if they are waiting until the due date, again, we have less compassion if they're waiting until the very end. So encourage them to work on it a little bit quicker. One thing you should know, and this is in Becky's document up at the top, is that if you do have a student with disabilities or has an accommodation letter that's going to request extra time, what you're going to do is scroll down here to test availability exceptions. You'll add a user, and then basically you're going to search for a person. You can click on that person's name and it will pop up here. Let's just pick out someone, first person, and if we wanted to do this, you can see this pops up. What you're going to need to do is before they take this test, you're going to, maybe they have double time in your class, so you're going to change that to 50. You don't need to change the availability, and then you're going to end up clicking submit. Let's say a student has some kind of death in the family, they can't make it to your lab, they've missed the test, then you can give them a second attempt, right? And so they've missed the first one, BB Learn graded it, marked it as a 0. You're going to go in here and click multiple attempts, and then you'll change the availability date, and that will reopen the test for them to take. The other thing that you're going to need to change, and I didn't mention this with the weekly reviews, but each week you need to set up a few, probably 20 or 30 minutes to go through all of your BB Learn shells and update the due dates and the display times. Okay, so the due dates are right down here. The weekly assignments and the tests are due 1 week from their lab, and they're due right before your lab. So let's say your lab is Mondays at 10 o'clock in the morning. that student has to complete the weekly review, the notebook submission, and the test by 9:59 of the following week. Okay, and so you're going to need to program those due dates in here. That will populate into the calendar, and they're going to then be held accountable, each week that they're getting their assignments done. Okay, and then you'll just click submit down here. Everything else you can leave. Okay, I also have, I believe, the last day of the week, so every Friday at midnight, when labs are all done, the students can then get feedback on their test, and so they'll see the score that they got, and they'll see which ones they got wrong, so that way they at least get a little bit of feedback on their tests, and they can kind of fix those things. Then they can schedule a time with you to meet in person or in via Zoom or in your open labs or however you want to go about doing that, to go over the test if they want it. That's my dog Nova. I was wondering when that was going to actually happen. I'm really surprised that it took that long of a time before she started barking at something or anything. Okay, last is the spot where they're going to submit their notebook drawings. And again, they're going to print out that notebook checklist. They're going to make their drawings. They're going to take photos of those drawings, compile it into a single PDF, and they're going to upload it here each week. Okay, we're almost done. So thanks for your attention. Down here, you'll notice the final practical in both 201. In both 201 and 202. So those are here. And then the last couple of sections, tracking your progress. It's super important that students know what grades they have each week. So again, if students are struggling in your labs, encourage them to keep track. This is from that Improving Your Academic Performance document, final grade description. So it's the same thing. It's just in a different location. This is where students are going to see all of the scores that they have on their assignments. So you can direct them here. You can have them open up BB Learn for you and walk through their grades with them if you're in an open labs. And then last, this is a document that I made called the Grade Calculator. I made this years ago. And so what this is just, I would always get students that would come up to me towards the final practical and they'd say, what do I need in order to get an A? What do I need in order to pass? What do I need to get the next highest grade? And it was like, oh, guys, right? Figure it out. Do basic math. But what I've found is that as I would work through this with students, you can use it as a way to kind of teach them and have a bigger conversation about what education is. So in our labs, we have 430 points. So they're going to fill this out. And what it does is it tells them the points that they need to get an A, B, C, D, right? Then they fill out what they want. You might have a kid that's like, I'm just here to pass, right? I just want a 70%. So they fill out a 90%. Okay, I want to get a 90%. So therefore I need 387 points. Well, let's say they then look at their BB Learn with you and you say, okay, well, what's your percent? You're at a 72%. Okay, cool. Well, the current total points in class right now, let's say we're kind of towards the end of the semester, is 250 points. Well, they then have 180 points in the class. There's 207 remaining, and so, they need 207, and there's only 180 points remaining. So they can't get an A. Okay, they need 115% to get that A. So not possible. So you might say, okay, well, let's see. Can you get an 85%? Well, no, you still can't get an 85. How about an 84%? Well, you still need 101% of the points, and that's not going to be possible. Then you can say 83%. Okay, well, you can get an 83% in this class if you get basically all all 180 points. And then you can have the conversation and say, you've been performing at a C level. Getting an A at this point is impossible. So at best, if you perform at a B level, 10% higher, 11% higher than what you've been performing at, you could pull it off. So statistically, it's feasible. Do you have the time to work that hard? Can you reallocate time from another class that you're doing well in and not study as much there and study more in my lab? How's your work life? How's your social life? How's your family life? Are these things that you even have time to add in to study more, right? So that allows you to have a bigger conversation. And the other thing that you can point out is this last column, which says, you know, to kind of put this percent into perspective is like, well, okay, you've been, you know, performing at a 72% level. You need to get almost 20s on all your tests, and you've been getting, you know, 14s. So, you know, how are you going to improve that? Okay. Again, you know, let's say your student has an 85%, or sorry, let's say your student wants a 90, right? But now it's maybe towards the beginning of the semester, they're doing a little bit better, and they say to you, you know, can I get an A in this class? And you say, well, you know, you have an 85%, there's only 120 points that we've gone over, you need 285 of the 310 points available, therefore you need 92% of the remaining points, so you should be shooting for 18s on your tests. Yes, you can do it. Again, can you find the time? Do you have the ability to work this much harder, right? Maybe you just perform at an 85% for the rest of the semester. So again, it just allows you to have a bigger conversation about what it means to be an A student and what it means to work hard and to improve study skills. Okay. All right, and then our last resource down here is again that same folder of the helpful resources on campus, but again, it's just down here at the bottom because, I don't know, I figured if students were thinking about their grades, they might then say, oh geez, I should think about getting some help. And so this is all here for them again. So that was a little bit longer than I had expected to take, but I hope that this is really helpful for you, and I hope this gets you situated with BB Learn. I hope it also helps you as a student. Since you are a graduate student, you might utilize some of these resources, but I also really hope that it allows you to have better conversations with your students that are struggling and helps you feel a little more confident that you can approach one of your students that is failing or has a D, and you can say, let's sit and talk, let's have a Zoom meeting, and let me show you some of these resources. Let me show you what the Academic Success Center is, and let me help you do better, okay? So yeah, each week we'll have weekly lab meetings. You're welcome to ask us questions. All of the veteran TAs that have been around are great and have been super helpful with students in the past, so they all have different experiences. They might have other stories to share with you. So we're looking forward to seeing you at our orientation. Welcome to 201 and 202 labs, and thanks a lot for watching this video.